So I'd like to, Catherine, bring on our next guest, Dan Irvin, who's going to come in from the green room. I'd like to introduce Dan. Hi, Dan. You hear us okay?
I can hear you perfectly. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we're all good, all good. So Dan is another one from Dallas, Texas. So definitely, if we did our word cloud, we'd see Dallas is definitely featuring high there. And Dan is an experienced leader in sales, operations, and building peak performance teams, so important skill. He's also looking for consulting assignments, but for over a decade, he's brought proven excellence and experience and commitment to leadership roles within national organizations. And he's created award-winning results in a number of the activities that he's worked in. And I thought what Dan could, the reason I connected with Dan on LinkedIn, right? That's where we connected.
That's right.
Where else, right? That's the place now, right? And I thought invited him when I told Dan about this event. He was very interested in it, and I invited him on, and we discussed a couple of topics. But I think the topic we landed on was really about, and I think it's a really practical one, Dan. This idea of, how does someone, particularly who's in job search mode, either looking for their next job or perhaps a freelancer looking for the next client, how do you plan your day? You're like, what's a framework that's really efficient? It focuses on helping you win and also keeping positive, right? Because it can be very disheartening if you're putting this work in and not getting results. So, how do you approach that? What's your suggestion around that whole area?
Yeah, so before I jump into that, I wanted to mention, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. I've been bouncing in and out of this all day with different meetings that I've had, different client meetings I've had, but I've come back into this.
Okay.
I feel like we need to give Catherine and Mike like a bathroom break. Do you guys need to go to the bathroom? I mean, like nonstop.
We have a secret procedure that we.
Yeah, I figured as much.
Well, I shouldn't speak for Catherine, but.
Well, whenever I just disappear randomly, that's when I had to jet, and then I come right back.
Well, it was either a bathroom break or can I send you some food? I feel like you guys are. Anyways, I just joking. I love.
No. I had a bagel and cream cheese. Thank you to my wonderful husband earlier. He was like serving me, bringing me stuff, and I was like sliding it under the camera so nobody could see. It was very ninja of him. So
thank you. I may need some sustenance at about 5 p.m. Eastern, but I'm doing okay. And yeah, Catherine and I organized that at the beginning. We have this little procedure that's going on so we can take our comfort breaks and our food breaks and our drink breaks at the right time. But thank you for thinking of us, Dan. I appreciate that.
Yes, that was very thoughtful, Dan. Thank you.
You bet. Well, one of the sessions that I was able to pop in on earlier was with Michaela, and one of the topics that came up that you guys were talking about is organizing your day and creating a plan for success. And this actually ties into what I was talking about. And Catherine, you were specifically mentioning, organizing your day on your calendar and having these different buckets of time. I couldn't agree more. And also understanding how your brain works. When you said that, you immediately went to my favorite author, Daniel Pink, in his book, When. He talks about this idea of larks, owls, and third birds. So if you're confused on what that is, there's a plug for Dan Pink's book, and I don't earn any money from that, but just go look it up. So
all right, will do.
It made me think of that immediately, and this concept that we all go through 3 things every day: this peak, this trough, and this rebound. So anyways, I could talk forever about that. And then the other thing that was mentioned was naps. Taking naps. Yes. Can we just get on nap training?
Yeah, one of the things, Dan, that you can't see off camera here is one of the things off camera here. I have a little couch just right over here. It's literally, I can take 3 steps and I'm there, and it has a pillow on it, and I do it. But what's the secret? There's a secret with naps, though. What's the secret with naps? It's not too long, right? What is there a sweet spot time, right?
There is. So the important thing too, and this is part of that rebound concept that I was talking about. The important thing is that actually they say that you should drink or take some caffeine, okay, and then lay down, and it's that 18 to 24 minutes of literally resting, because that's about how long it takes for the caffeine to kick in. So when your body's resting for that around 20-minute time frame, and you get up, the caffeine also snaps in and your body got that rest. So it's not hours long naps. It's that short nap with the caffeine beforehand that could really jolt you.
So there's a tip. Okay. Got that.
Something to think about there. But I am trying to get on the nap consistency. I have 3 kids that doesn't really that much. So
they're not really into naps. So they're not into you napping.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, they like to rest, but they don't want me to rest. That's right. So hey, to add on to that great conversation that you guys were having with Michaela, if I had to pick one goal setting, prioritizing process that has been so successful for me that I would share with other people, is defining what success looks like at the beginning of your day. And so the way that I do that is that I pick 2 to 4, and I usually land around that 3 range, but it could be more depending on the day and what's going on. But usually, typically 3 items that are going to define success today. And even though I may get 10 or 20 items done, when I get those 3 things done, that's how I define success. So I think what happens oftentimes is that we are pulled in all of these different directions. At any given time, we all have literally probably 100 things on our to-do list that really don't get progress made on them in the way that they really should. So if I had to make one tip to job seekers or anyone really is look at your goals, look at your tasks that you created. Hopefully you created them at a week or a quarterly time frame. Specifically for me, I create annual goals that then break down all the way to a weekly component that then I can divide into daily. But you want to pick 3 things that are actually going to help you progress on those goals. And by the way, those goals aren't always just professional goals. We have personal lives. We're real people.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So some of those goals, like I'm right now, to give you an example, I'm training for a marathon. And
good on you.
Good for you.
Yeah. So 3 days a week I'm running, and the other 3 days I'm walking. But every Friday, my mileage increases by 0.5 mile. So this Friday I will run 5.5 miles. Well, it didn't start there, first of all. And secondly, you better believe that one of my 3 goals for Friday is to run the 5.5 miles. So your personal goals have to fit into your goals. Again, how you feel success. So I want to make that clear, because people think, well, I got to have these. I don't have time for my personal life because I need to fit all my professional goals in, and that's just not how it works. Because we come to work as a whole person. So you got to take all that into account.
Absolutely. So you talked about goal setting. Like, do you have any? I mean, Catherine actually mentioned something that I'm not as good at as I think she is this idea of like calendaring activities. But have you got and you said, goal setting is important at the beginning of the day, right? Setting out your, what you call success, setting that at the beginning of the day. So, at the end of the day, as you said, you may have done 10 things, but did you get your key goals done? I think that's where you're at. What's the tools that you use for that? Do you have any particular tools or techniques for actually doing that goal setting process and measuring it?
Absolutely. When it comes to the organizational spectrum, I'm probably on the far end of it. So I will share with you what I do. Take from it what makes sense for you. And if anyone out there wants to collaborate deeper, let's connect and let's collaborate on it. But I would tell you that there's a process that I've gone through before, and I kind of look at it. I've become better at it over the years. But if you were to look at all your tasks that you do in a week's time frame, okay, and there's literally a process that I put my team members through and leaders through and ask them to do, is say, hey, for the next week, track everything you do. I'm not saying track it by hour, just at the end of the day, kind of take account for what you've done.
Right.
So if you take all of those items and you broke them down into individual kind of buckets, you'd probably come out with literally 3-4 buckets of things that you're actually doing, of kind of these higher general concepts. And so for me, those are really admin time, and then what I would consider real work time, the real stuff happening. So admin, that's important, and then the actual real work that actually needs to get done, right? And so I then divide out my day based on that concept. And if I could throw a kind of a wrench in the system here, can I share my screen, Mike? Is that?
You can. I think Nina, have you got anything? Yeah, Nina just needs to quickly unshare. Nina in the control room there. Thanks, Nina. Did you unshare? I think you just did. Yep. Now you should be able to share. And here we go. Well, that looks just tidy straight away. Like I'm impressed.
So that is nice. I have this on this Google Doc, but then I have it actually printed. You can't see it, but it's printed right here on my wall. And this is how I work my day. And this is, you can see at the top, it says weekly schedule. It's really an ideal weekly schedule. It doesn't always go to this, but it certainly is an ideal process. You can see the different buckets of a time that I have is admin time and real work, like I talked about. Now, how I divide that out is you'll see at 8 a.m. every day, I have my workday startup. At the end of the day, at 5 o'clock, I have my workday shutdown, right? That's where admin time, and along with lunch in the middle, kind of gets done, right? So I have designed 3 areas of my day where that admin time gets done. That's social media, that's email, that's all of that stuff, right? Now, the other components is this meeting time. You notice that it's Tuesday afternoon, and what am I doing? I'm in a meeting, and this is the meeting time, right? If you would have asked me to be on tomorrow, Mike, I would have told you, oh, can't. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay. Okay. I'm looking at that. I just brought it up a bit closer so we can see. Got you there. Okay.
We picked the right day.
Yeah, we chose the right day. Yeah.
But there are obviously exceptions I make. But this is how I bucket out my time. And so when people want to schedule time with me, I give them the options of those Monday times and Tuesday times. Right. And so I know the reason I'm saying yes to meetings on Mondays and Tuesdays is because I'm saying no to meetings on Wednesdays and Thursdays so I can get the project work done, the real work, if you will, of progressing me towards my goals. So I could spend an hour on this sheet alone. I'll just leave it at that. And if anyone's interested in diving in deeper, let me know. But this is how I set up and work each one of my days to have success.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you're able to share one of those. That'd be great. If you could share, we could actually share it afterwards, Dan, or people can find it. It'd be great to get something like that.
Great visualization of exactly what I was talking about earlier. That is fantastic.
Yeah. And I'm not as good as that. I'm struggling and trying to get towards that, Dan and Catherine, in terms of truly calendaring my activities. As I said before, I'm really good at making to-do lists.
You are at that.
Yeah, but
so that's the first step, really. The first step is to create the list. And then what I'm suggesting is pull the 3 things out of that are the most significant and most important, and pull those to the top. And then get those done first, or just make sure you get them done, because those are the most important things to progress you forward. I wanted to share too, this fallacy that I'm trying to get people to think a different way, this multitasking fallacy. That's really what it is. Us as humans, we are not designed to multitask. We're just not. And I've done a ton of research on this and looked at this. And most recently, I was reading about an article out of the University of California. It talks about, do you know that their research shows that it takes 23 minutes and 15 seconds for a person to refocus around a new topic when they switch. So if you're constantly switching, how much time are you losing because your brain's not catching up with your eyes and how quickly you're moving? Your brain needs to settle in to really gain the benefit of the time that you're working on something. So stick to one thing, and be focused.
I mentioned there's a startup I was working with in New York called Cave Day, which use some of these, I don't know if you've heard of them, but they use some of these techniques where it's all about removing distractions, creating your action list, and then taking the first one and just focusing on that, and do not have the emails bipping in, the likes coming in from the social media post you made an hour ago. Oh, did anyone post it? No, put that all aside. Focus on your activity, because of this. We think we're really good at cognitive switching, I think is one word that's given to this. I've heard of this idea of, we all think we're great cognitive switchers, that we can instantly switch. But what I think that you're saying is we're actually not as good at it as what we think we might be.
We're great at clicking. We can click really
right.
But our brains don't catch up to that, and they're not wired to do that.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. Look, there's been great insights, Dan. I'm really glad that we connected on LinkedIn, and that we got this time to have you on. So I'd like to continue that. There's a couple of really good things I'd love you to share. A couple of really good pointers that I'd like you to share.
Yeah.
And well, you're welcome to stay on a few more minutes if you like, as I think you might have met Denise. So thank you very much, Dan, for all your insights as we introduce Denise. I'm going to bring Denise in now. You're welcome to stay for a couple of minutes, Dan, and but I know you've got to get off. Denise, hi there, Denise. You hear us okay?
Hello. How y'all doing?
Good, thank you. Denise Browder is the founder of Sway Workspace and Workplace. And we had a great conversation a week or so ago now. It's not that long ago, actually. But what Sway is a community of people that are evolving to work as a lifestyle. And the mission is to transform the 9-to-5 routine at companies to a more flexible work style based on choice, built on trust. The future of work is now. And I thought, wow, isn't this the time to talk about this, right? So the eternal optimist, Denise tells me, keen innovator and desire for flexibility, that she sort of brought her into this space. And this effectively what is a startup for her. She's deeply influenced by the themes of work and empowering women. Denise found her passion at the intersection of the two in our collective ability to unlock female potential by empowering people to choose where and when they work as a lifestyle. So, and I think what we talked about, Denise, is this evolution to work as a lifestyle and the future of work. So what is the future of work? What does this all mean?
Well, first of all, I know I'm taking the last position in pole position here, but I know you saved the best for last. So I'm totally down with that.
Well, we are going into an informal cocktail networking event after this, so you can say that's the last one.
This is perfect.
Which you're invited to with your beverage of choice.
I will be attending, absolutely. And so listen, I first of all applaud you all for putting this event on. I find the event, I've been very much like Dan. I've been in and out of the event all day. And I found the format super cool and engaging. For me, I'm not in a recruiting function. I never have been. And to me, it's always seemed like a big black box. I don't really know what happens in there. So I think for people to get involved with you guys throughout the day and seeing how you think about that and what you ask and what you think about and what you advise has been very eye-opening in connecting this industry, which is a future of work initiative as well. So I entirely applaud you all for putting this event on. I thought it was dynamite, and I truly myself am looking forward to the next one you put on.
Right.
So I honestly, a lot of what I say, our view at Sway Workplace and the future of work and work as a lifestyle, a lot of it actually pulls on what Dan said, which encourages me because I think that we are all thinking the same, and Sway is putting words to what we're thinking and putting people in a community to talk amongst each other. So Dan, you mentioned the idea of, being the whole person. That is so significantly key because you're only, you're one person living one life, and you said it very well. So you're not somebody different when you go to work, and you're not somebody different when you come home. You're the same person. And we think about it in terms of when you try to be different people, that creates friction. And amongst the friction, you lose a huge amount of value. So for us, the future of work it's about humanizing the workplace. That is just a driving function. And I think it just pulls on all the things you touched on today. I mean, one of your viewers earlier asked about ageism, and that is just so important. Why does my age have any determinant on the value I can produce and continue to produce?
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And it's Sway. I just had a conversation with somebody last week that was unfortunately let go from their job. 20 odd years, more than 20 years in the corporate career. Now this guy is like 55 years old. He's right in that zone where do you go from here, right? And I said to him, and I do believe this is the case, I'm like, the world is your oyster. It's literally in the palm of your hand. I mean, look at all that work experience that you have, everything you've accomplished, your drive, your energy, everything you can demonstrate, you just jump in. And what we focus on in the future of work and within Sway Workplace, a big area is on skills. So if you cannot, and I'm not sure if you guys, I'm sure you guys had this conversation amongst yourselves, but the need to skill and reskill and upskill, they're cool terms that we throw around amongst ourselves and we talk about, but it's a real thing. And it's a real way to future-proof yourself. So anyone that is in the position that may not be working at the moment, I would advise through Sway Workplace, jump on these initiatives for skills. The edX is a great platform. So many ways to pick up a skill today to add into your repertoire and your arsenal for when you're back in the workforce. So that's a bit of a diversion, perhaps.
We've talked about that a lot today. The adding skills and taking this time to grow.
So what do you think, though, and maybe Dan could comment on this too if he's able to, Denise, but what is this time doing in terms of opening up companies, I guess, willingness, openness to discover new ways of engaging with employees? What is this going to do for us this time?
It's going to, COVID is a very difficult situation in many, many, many regards, but there are definitely some very clear silver linings to be had. And I think the biggest one is a change in perspective, meaning oftentimes the fear of change is far more intimidating than the change itself. So we're globally participating, all of us are, in this human design of an alternative way to work. And we're experiencing that right now. Even what we're doing in this format right now is being replicated in a lot of functions. So people would never adapt to an alternative way to work because you would think you couldn't for all these reasons you could list. But guess what? We're doing it. And we're doing it well. And we're killing it, right? It's all
right. Yeah.
That's right.
What's interesting for me to see, and I've been talking a lot about this is that, employers that were kind of ahead of the game, they kind of already have this idea and kind of getting that prepared for their employees. And so they're starting to see these new ways of actually getting work done. But what I think is even more interesting than that is that you have the eyes of employees seeing that this is actually what they want. This is, and they can do it well. And so now the demand from an employee perspective, employers are going to have to catch up to that if they're not already on that path.
100%. Yes.
It is the case. And I think, it really isn't that difficult. So our company's called Sway because we believe, you can just sway in and out of all sides of your life to be so humanistically your whole self, and you solve so many issues. And we don't think this is monumental change. We're not sending anybody to the moon. We are literally taking a little shimmy to the left or a little shimmy to the right, and you unlock this perspective on what we can do together. And in the past, it was considered a corporate perk, the 9-to-5 routine, which is this idea that you commute to a location on a repeating timetable, is so widely practiced, and it stems from our manufacturing days, which served us well when we were a manufacturing economy. But today we're a knowledge economy and we practice digital skills. That is the future. So there's a big disconnect between the 9-to-5 routine practice and where we need to be. And that disconnect is actually the opportunity of which COVID is highlighting, that we can actually make this happen. So the change that's occurring is the fact that the genie is out of the bottle. And I don't think we'll ever look at work the same way again. If you look at JP Morgan Chase coming out saying that they're reevaluating their real estate footprint isn't a light comment. It's a very significant comment. It's signaling what we're going to see happen on the mainstream, and it's our opportunity, we see.
It is. I was talking to a gentleman who was, he's probably a guy maybe in his 60s. He's worked for one of the large banks, and he commuted. He was based in the greater New York area. He commuted from New Jersey every day. He had an hour and a half commute each way. So he's 3 hours in public transit each way. And they were allowed to work like 1 day a week from home, but the other 4 days they had to be in the office. So now for nearly a month, they've been working all remote. And I asked him, I said, what's it like? He says, no one's detected a single difference in our work output. We just seem to be just getting it done.
Beauty of it.
And then people, and he says already executives have started to say, what is that? He commuted into Lower Manhattan every day. I know the office where they are. It's one of these huge, must cost millions and millions of dollars a year to keep this facility running. And I said, I wonder what the executives must be looking at this purely. One of the answers is say, can I just save space, right? Can I just save costs, plus give my employees a much more flexible work experience?
Yeah,
what's your view on
that? We all think of things in terms of dollars and cents, and I have a finance background, and I think of everything through how does it affect the bottom line, because that really is the driver, right? There's lots of things I would love to do, but I'm only going to really do today what I need to do. And Dan, to your point, you pull out your 3 priorities, those go to the top, and that's what gets done. Anything else is gravy after that. priority is protecting the bottom line, and that's always going to be the way it is, and rightfully so, because that's how we support companies, that support jobs, that support our economy. But when we look at this through a different lens, the idea of, labor cost is a major line item in any P&L, and real estate a significant line item in P&L. So I think what we're seeing is that those line items are now inefficient. There's huge latency in lost productivity from people that don't want to be in the office 5 days a week, or people that have been excluded completely. So to retain, promote, develop, and attract top talent, and then to really maximize our productivity and value to the organization, give them a little flexibility in how they work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting when you marry this idea of actually giving employees what they want, and how that can have an exponential effect on how they act and interact within your organization and the outcomes of that. I mean, it's there are studies out there that show employees are obviously happier in their workspace. Their outcomes in their workplace and the work that they need to do just jumps exponentially.
It would.
Yes, and I tell you, I've actually run my entire company remotely. Everybody that ever has done work for me is completely remote. I don't believe in having an office. I don't do a bunch of nonsensical expenses. And one of the reasons is that I watched a very good firm go under because they had all of these expenses. They couldn't float through a hard time because they had the expensive real estate and a prime location, like you were addressing, Mike. They had all the other expenses to go with it, because it's not just as simple as, oh, I have this office. Then there are additional bills that go with that as well. Whereas if your employees are remote, you don't have that. Plus, everybody likes, well, not everybody, that's not true. There are people that prefer to go into an office, but most people like the flexibility of remote. And it is the way that the workforce is going.
It is the way of the future. And, at Sway, we don't think that everyone should work remote because it doesn't suit some people. And we also don't think that everyone should be in an office. We think the future of work is a sweet spot of somewhere in between. And where you land in between is quite unique to you. But the real lever to get there is trust. And I mean, if you really want to see exponential value from someone in your team, trust them. Trust them to be who they are. And
look, I found that in organizations I've worked with is where I've given people flexibility, it generally pays you back extremely well, because people love that. They really like the fact that you've trusted them and you've given them flexibility, and then generally they feel better. So, you know what, I've seen them log back on at 9 p.m. at night after they've had the dinner, put the kids to bed or whatever, and say, because you gave me the flexibility. Like, my mornings are really difficult. I got kids to get to work, or I've got an elderly person I'm dealing with, or something. You really accommodated that, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
I've had employees that are they're so funny. They're so used to bosses that won't work with them, that when the last time I was actually managing for another company, I had employees that would say things. I actually had a girl come into me and say, I have to quit. And I said, I'm so sorry. What's going on? And she said, well, this and such is going on with the person who usually watches my son. And so I'm going to have to watch him for about the next week, and I don't have any more PTO. She thought she had to quit her job to watch her son. And I actually had her bring him into the office, and that turned into a whole other hilarious thing. We ended up having a 5-year-old assistant manager.
I love it.
That's a whole other funny story. But
how much? I was going to ask the question around that, and following up what you said. A question for Denise: how much does this flexible working arrangements play into the whole diversity space? What's the relationship?
I mean, it's enormous. So the 9-to-5 routine is this idea to cover it is you have to go to an office and on a repeating timetable. And the only reason that that's in place is because we practice bias. And bias, there's internal bias and external. So the internal bias is that I need to do FaceTime because I don't trust myself or the outcome. The external bias, which is even more damaging, is proximity bias. And it's the idea that if you're not in the seat beside me, I can't really trust that the work that you're doing is going to be of value. And that is the area that needs to change the most. And that's what I think where trust truly comes in. Mike, I'm so sorry. What was your original question there? Just totally escaped.
Well, no, it's just about how much are the initiatives around an achievement around diversity linked to flexible work practices?
So that routine we talked about, it has forever since it's been in place. It's either suppressed a huge amount of value in work, and it's actually marginalized and excluded large portions of the workforce, whether it's gender diversity, definitely disability diversity, and in some ways racial diversity. So by loosening up where and when we can work with a reasonable level of choice and trust, you actually open up huge channels of diversity, and you solve for a lot of these issues because you're democratizing access to work for a wide range of people. And that is just an untold gift to be had.
Yeah, right. I think that's something that, and we also know that the results are in that organizations that are more diverse, there's a direct correlation with success, right? That's a measured stat. It's actually been measured. And so this idea of having a flexible workplace will lead to more diversity. And I think the way I've thought of diversity and inclusion practices is, I think we might have spoken about this, is that really the way I heard someone else say it should be inclusion and diversity practices. Yep. Because if you're inclusion right from the beginning, diversity will flow. To your point before, it's because of the biases that come up about inclusion means you're less diverse. So I think it's a really interesting piece around that. I'm wondering what I'd like to do. I'd like to open up and see if there's any questions here in the last pieces of our program here. I might ask Nina. Nina, can we go back to our Q&A slide and see if we could, if there's any last questions, and if Denise and Dan are willing to, they might like to stay on. If you're able to stay on for a few more minutes and just see while we just continue this conversation, whether there's any questions that that come to mind here as we put there. So Nina in the control room. Nina's been doing an amazing job keeping our show running in the background there. Thank you very much, Nina. She's got our questions up here. So just let us know if any question comes in. So those in the audience, if you'd like to ask a question, you can go to slido.com, #careerfair, or just hold your camera up to the QR code. Most cameras will register that and go straight to the site, and then you can enter your question. So we'll keep that open. But this item, I think we touched on this, Denise, when we connected, this whole idea of diversity. We saw that coming up here around people asking questions about age discrimination, and the fact that they really feel it's a barrier. And so do you really feel then that if companies really are open to more practical, more flexible work practices, that it will lead to a more diverse working environment?
It definitely will. And just to go back on specifically on the ageism comment, I think that ageism is another kind of subconscious bias, and we're all biased. The only ding on somebody is if you don't address it in yourself. It's just a naturally occurring thing for all of us. But ageism, I believe, is the case where somebody looks at your age and makes an assumption that you're out of date.
Right.
But in this world of the future of work is not people don't look at your tenure. And I think that, it's less relevant. I think maybe Google is one of those places that doesn't even look for a resume any longer because they're looking at your skill set. So an opportunity for anybody of any age, particularly like I mentioned, the gentleman I spoke with last week that is middle-aged and now looking for a job, if you can match the accomplishments in your career and then reskill yourself, you're demonstrating you're demonstrating your effort and you're thinking of future of work and how to make yourself employable for future companies or for companies that are adapting to the future of work. So as much as it democratizes the access to work for large groups of people, the onus is very equally upon the person and the talent to make themselves future-proof, to actually reskill and upskill and know what that is. So the idea about skills is there's technical skills, which we all must have. We think COVID has taught us that, but there's also a lot of soft skill, like those of teamwork, empathy, collaboration. Those are things that people are looking for in today's world, in today's economy. I'm sure you guys see that too, because those soft skills, social skills, are the drivers of the way that we create value in today's world and economy. So it's not necessarily simply digital hard skills plus time spent. It's also these softer skills that all together create almost like an armor for yourself for the future of work and your employability and sustainability. So there's a lot of ways for democratizing access, but it equally has to come from the talent member being autonomous about themselves. So we know we can no longer rely on companies to provide those aspects of training to us. You have to go out and get it for yourself. And that's, in a lot of ways, is a mindset shift.
Yeah, it is. It is. A question has come in, and I think I might ask Denise to address this if I could, Denise. So a question came in that saying, forgive me if I missed this, but could you speak to the positive societal impacts from where caregivers are working from home? Like parents are now working from home. What's the positive side of caregivers, in this case, parents working from home?
So I guess the question specifically in this COVID area?
I think so, yes. I think so.
I can tell you from personally going through this at the moment. So I have 3 young children, and myself and my husband are working from home. We're a tight team of 5 in our 3-bedroom house. And there are major upsides to this current situation. It's not going to last forever. And I can say it has made me very efficient with my time, and it's allowed me to remove a lot of noise. And one thing that Dan mentioned earlier, which is interesting, is this idea that we have this view that when you work, you have to work for 8 to 10 hours a day. But sometimes you're truly working 5 to 6 hours of hard, deep work. And the rest is somewhat less important that can be done as you go. So I would think that my opinion is that this experience in COVID, in terms of being a parent and a caregiver, has taught me to be a lot more efficient with my time, because removing noise allows me to be more connected to my family. And there's a huge upside and benefit to being close to my family now in these ways and in this situation that allows us to see each other differently. So from the caregiving aspect, there's huge benefits from a societal perspective. I mean, that's a whole another subject we could talk about for forever. And we're seeing the tensions, and we're seeing how to resolve it, and we're seeing problems in our families, and we're resolving them as we go, because it's such a unique situation. But I know for certain that we're going to come out of this better and stronger than we went into it, and very unexpected, because this is such an uninvited change. But it is
right.
But there are silver linings to be had there too.
Right.
Another question. Are you pointing that question? Yeah, I'm just going to bring this in here. I'm just going to take this out for a second and just look at this. So we had a question here from Sam. Just make sure I understood it, and I'll see if the panel can address this one. It says, how do you deal with ageism, criticism, and filtering in a positive and realistic manner? So I guess that's, is that looking, I guess it's age bias in some way. I think that's what Sam's referring to, in a positive and realistic manner. Are there any good resources to help someone deal with ageism bias to stay employed? Who'd like, Catherine, do you want to have a first?
Yeah, I'm going to try to take a whack at this from a few different angles, because I'm not exactly sure what stage of employment they're referring to, whether it's job searching or once they're in a job. So I'm going to kind of address both. So when it comes to the job search and ageism, I don't know if you were able to hear earlier, Sam, we did talk about things like on your resume, doing not posting when you graduated from school, not putting the years, only going back 7 to 10 years in your resume. But honestly, energy on the resume is everything. And when I say show energy on your resume, what I mean is show excitement, brag a little bit about yourself, show off all the awesome things that you've done, be specific. These are I went over this goal by this much. I accomplished this. I brought in this new technology or this new innovation. I did this and that. Show the energy that will combat it there. Same thing on your LinkedIn profile. Show energy. Always show energy. Oh, job searching. Okay, thank you very much for your clarification, Sam. So start there with the resume and profile. When it comes to interviewing, that's when it gets a little bit tough, because they're going to figure it out at some point, right? Here's what I would say about that. I've dealt with this a lot. That's the number one prejudice that I have clients try to pull with me. And by the way, it never works. Number one, go into everything and show your energy, because what's ultimately happening, Sam, is because I've broken this down with a lot of employers. I said, well, what are you really afraid of? When you don't want people of a certain age, what are you really afraid of? And there's two things. Number one is energy level. Okay. And so that's going to be, or, ability to do the job. So that's going to be, it's going to be very, very important for you to go in energy and pep and showing them that you've got this and that you're confident. That is absolutely imperative to go in. And that's true of anybody, by the way, but that's especially true if you're trying to overcome ageism. The other one is technology. Now, I will tell you, and Mike's about to start laughing, I am technologically handicapped. I can do the basics, but I literally break every bit of technology ever in life. And if there's anything at all confusing, I can't do it. And then I have an 84-year-old grandmother who just learned brand new technology recently on the computer. And so if for somebody to tell me that it's an age issue is completely and totally ridiculous, but it is something that people have in their brains. So demonstrate your knowledge and say, I know, I don't know, whatever, Google Docs, or I know Excel, or I know this computer technology, and I'm very quick with it. I also just learned, and talk about something that you've recently learned. I've recently learned this and that. That will help them to get past that click in their brain, because what they're really afraid of are those two things: energy level and the technology aspect. I hope that helps, Dan.
Catherine,
yeah, sure, Dan.
When you were saying that, Catherine, it made me think, it's really about confidence, about when you come into the space to have those conversations. And so if you're already in your head about, oh man, I'm just not, to use Catherine's example, I'm just not that great at technology, you've just created this limiting belief in your brain that you're not good at technology. Right. And so I would encourage someone in that space to say, okay, write it all down. What do you think that you're not good at? What do you think's holding it up? And now make the opposite. If all things were equal, what would make this true? So I'm not great at technology. Okay, I'm very good at learning and studying and researching, and I can get good at technology, right? And then have that mentality in your head versus I can't versus I can. But you got to get it out. You got to start retraining the way you're thinking about it. Otherwise, you're going to convey that in the conversation that you're not good at that particular aspect.
I really agree with you, Dan, and I've experienced this definitely myself in terms of little story. When I first started networking with startups in the city, is for my consulting business, I hadn't worked with startups before. I went into in one of the first networking meetings, and literally walked in there, and everyone looked like the age of my daughter, and I walked in there, and I actually said to myself, this brain, the little voice in my head, which works, to your point, was saying, wow, Mike, all these people are going to think you're here to pick up your daughter. That's what I actually said to myself. And I said, what, that's stupid. So I just turned that around. I put that to one side. I said, no, that's an outside view. And I just focused on value and focused on the value I can bring, and asking these startup founders about their companies and what have you. And I was pleasantly surprised how much engagement I got. So much so that I now run a pitch competition for startups in New York. It's amazing how, and I really believe that the way we think about ourselves becomes outwardly what the outcome is. And it's so important to make the decision within yourself about what you believe in and your stance, and that becomes reality. These limiting beliefs we have, I really believe you there, Dan.
Right, absolutely. Oh, we missed a question too. There was one on Nina's screen.
Okay, let's bring that up. The technology one, was it, for Roxanne?
Brings technology, yeah.
Working from home brings some technology questions and the equipment. Maybe Denise could also help on that. Maybe I'll ask Denise on that one. So the question from Roxanne is, bring some technology questions. Should there be HR policies around having the right equipment and the right workspace?
Absolutely. And depending on what size company you work with, you have to lead with the security mind, meaning you have to be very aware of data sensitivities and security when you are working outside of the office. But the nice thing is that's a mindset, right? That's having a remote and a digital mindset. And that's a muscle that you build over time. You practice it. You don't buy it off the shelf. You have to truly intentionally practice it. And the idea of technology, remote technologies, is there is a plethora of technologies. We're not short on it. We're not short on options. Many, many, many technologies are out there to use for either video conferencing, having an audio call, or for working on a document real time and saving to the cloud. Those are the basic premises of what you need to do to work outside of the office. Loads of companies have addressed that by creating really easy to use software, really easy to access, and oftentimes very inexpensive. So 20 years ago, you would have to buy a software package. Now, today, you can subscribe to it. So as opposed to paying $20,000 for something, today you can pay $5 a month and use that service on a month-to-month basis. So the economics around technology has completely shifted. It's become very user-friendly, very intuitive, super simple to install. And the only consideration is that it's secured properly. And oftentimes companies have VPNs they can offer to you. So the actual connection itself is readily available, but it does have to be defined and confined within an HR policy, because you want to be very clear about about how you're going to work outside of the office and communicate and store and save in a sensitive way your documents. So all the technology is there, really easy to use, lots at your fingertips. The price point has completely come down to make that an absolute reality, but it's not the wild, wild west. You do want to have a robust HR policy that documents how that communication can flow, and then also how you set up your office. That's another good point, right? Getting a monitor for your home, a comfortable desk, good lighting, a chair. Is that something that could be sponsored by your company to save on their real estate footprint? I think so. There's lots of options out there for that to happen. But all that can be defined in HR policy. And then once you have that in place, then you can open up this new world of work.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Any other questions there that have come in? I think we've got them all there now. Look, really want to thank you, Denise, for coming in, and Dan again. Thanks for your insights, particularly Denise, about this whole area of flexibility. In working arrangements, and how perhaps one of the upsides of this time is organizations will think more about the value and the possibility of more flexible working arrangements. So I really, really thank you. Thank you, Dan, for staying on with us and helping us with our Q&A. As we went through this, we wanted to finish off with a few last-minute questions. I really thank you for that and your insights, particularly on how I'm being organized. So I'm going to take some of those myself. So thank you, Denise. Thank you, Dan. And please come back if you can. I did send you the links. We've got a virtual cocktails just for half an hour after the end of this. If you're able to join us with a beverage of your choice at 5 p.m. Eastern, there's a Zoom link, and we're actually going to share that with everybody here. To come and join us if you're able to. So again, thank you, Denise, and thank you, Dan.
Guys.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Thank you all so much.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.